So your XLP30 skidding system comes completely contained in its own storage box. Inside the storage box, over that way, you'll find all the components you need to set up the system. Inside the storage box, you'll find your track sections, your slider plates, you've got 2 push-pull cylinders, and inside the box also has contents with manual. And on the other side, you've got your track lifting handles and a box of connector bars. So I'll tell you a little bit about hydraulic skidding. Hydraulic skidding is the operation of sliding a load horizontally at ground level along a guided path. The guided path with this system are your track sections, and there are steel tracks with a UHMW high density polyethylene plastic, and the slider pads are what the load sits on, that sits on the track, or has a stainless steel polished bottom surface. When you want to set up your tracks, you want to make sure you have a clear straight line to slide that's obstacle free, and you want to make sure that the surface that you're setting the track on is suitable for not damaging the track or your load.
Please follow these safety precautions when setting up and operating your hydraulic skidding equipment. Only qualified operators should install, operate, adjust, maintain, clean, repair, or transport this equipment. Never exceed recommended maximum load and pressure ratings. Good practice recommends using only 80% of these ratings. Always wear appropriate personal protective equipment. Personnel should be positioned to monitor any area of the operation that is not visible to the power unit operator, and should be in continuous visual or radio contact with the operator. Never operate any equipment without all provided guards and safety devices in place and in good working condition. Never handle hoses or couplers while they are under pressure, even when wearing personal protective equipment. There is a risk of serious personal injury from hose leaks, faulty or improperly connected hose couplers. If jacking a load, always use appropriate blocking or cribbing to guard against a falling or out of control load. Do not use any lubricants on the system other than those provided and or specified for use. For a complete list of safety precautions, please refer to the system's operating and maintenance manual.
Our standard XLP30 system comes complete with 12 feet of double track, and each track section is 56 inches long. When you set up the track sections, you want to make sure that the ground is suitable for supporting the tracks and the load. So you want to make sure it's straight, level, and clear. What we'll do now is we'll start setting up some track sections to demonstrate a slide. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to set up your first line of track in a straight line. You can either do that by following a chalk line guide or some sort of reference point, but you want to make sure that your first track is going in the direction that you want to go when it's straight. If you want to come in, I'll show you the track connection itself. The XLP30 track sections come with a male end and a female end. And to connect the tracks together, you just simply connect the dovetails and they lock into place. Then you finish the track connection with the track connection bar, and it just slides into the slots in the track, and that just prevents the tracks from moving up and down at the track connection point during the slide. For setting up the second track line, you got to know the width of your load, and you want to make sure that the second track line is spaced center to center of the footprint of your load. In our case, the load footprint width, center to center, it's approximately 37 inches. Okay, so now that that second track is down, the other thing you want to make sure is you want to make sure that the ends of your tracks are equidistant apart so that your push-pull cylinders push in unison on the load. If you don't ensure that, you could have your push-pull cylinders pushing unevenly on the load, which may cause damage to the load and the skidding system. And those look good. So as we set the track sections up and down the skid path, we just will take a tape measure and we'll measure the distance, the center to center distance between the track lines, making sure that the tracks are parallel. You want to make sure that your second track line is parallel to your first, straight, and your tolerance here is plus or minus a quarter inch. So it doesn't have to be perfect, so you're within plus or minus a quarter inch, you're okay. It's always good to double check if you think something's a little off. Take the time, double check your track setup, because the setup in these situations for hydraulic skidding is the most complicated, time-consuming part. The skidding operation is actually the easiest part, so take the time to set the system up the first time and your skid will go smoothly. So now what we'll do is we'll set up the slider plates that the load will be placed on. The slider plates is the interface between the load and the track. So your load will sit on the surface of the slider plate, and the base of the track is a polished stainless steel surface. And that will contact the track UHMW, giving you about a 15% friction factor. So the slider plates come in 1 foot lengths, 2 foot lengths, and 4 foot lengths, depending on the size of your load. You can either use all of them in conjunction or any mix of them to suit your load dimensions. The slider plates also come with dovetail connections, so they're very simple to connect. And when they're down on the track, they also come with slots so that you can get your lifting handles in, pick them up with ease. Now we'll place the slider plates down onto the track sections. So we'll set up the 4 foots. A 2 foot and a 1 foot, just for demonstration purposes. The next part of the system that goes onto the tracks are the push-pull heads. What the push-pull heads are is these are designed to interface with the push-pull cylinder, the track, and the skid shoes that the load sits on. Your load is actually going to also sit on this push-pull head, and you want to make sure that your load is always in direct contact with this front vertical face of the push-pull head. If not, you risk just pushing the front plate over, depending on the weight of your load, and you'll just end up damaging this front plate. So I'll go through that again when we set up the load on how critical that is. So it's simply just drop it and lock it into place with the slider plates. So now we're ready to put the push-pull cylinders onto the system and connect it to the push-pull head. The cylinders are held into the storage box with the clevis pin, and this needs to be removed. And then we'll use this pin and linch pin to connect the rod end of the cylinder to the push-pull head on the system. The cylinder assembly comes with handles, so you can easily pick it up out of the storage box. All right, you just simply set this down onto the track section. And then you just align the rod end into the slot in the push-pull head, and then just pop the pin through and secure it with the linch pin. And now you've got your cylinder connected to the push-pull head. So now that everything's connected, you can see that it's very easy to slide forward and also slide back. Now the system's set up in push mode to go forward. If you need to pull the load back or go backwards, to do that you simply just flip the directional control arm to the back. You'll see the directional control arms drop down and now they lock into the track on the back end, which will switch to pull mode. During operation, when you're in push mode, the load's going to get pushed forward by extension of the cylinder. When you reach full extension and you retract the cylinder, the load is going to hold the rod end in place and pull the body forward, and it's going to pull it all the way forward, and the directional arms are going to go up over the ratchet and reset into the next track slot. So that way, by simply extending and retracting the cylinder, you will push your load forward without having to get in and actually mechanically, manually reset your cylinder. Sometimes your load will not come in direct contact with the front face of the push-pull heads, which is critical for the operation of the system, because if your load is not in direct contact with the front face of the push-pull head, you're going to damage this front face. It's just going to push on the face and bend this thin plate forward. So in cases where you can't make direct contact, you can use blocking or shims to ensure full contact between the front face of the push-pull head and the load itself. And that's what we'll do in this situation. Before placing the load on the skidding system, you want to ensure that the sliding surfaces on the tracks and slider plates are clear of any dirt or debris that can cause damage to these surfaces. This includes the UHMW plastic on the tracks and the polished stainless steel surface on the bottom of the slider plates and push-pull heads. You also want to ensure that the sections of the load coming in contact with the skidding system are suitable for supporting the weight of the load. If not, the load could be damaged. In some cases, the contact area of the load on the system is small enough to cause point loading. Point loading the system can cause damage to the track sections and slider plates. If point loading is a concern, steps must be taken to distribute the contact area of the load more evenly over the skidding system. There are a number of ways this can be done. Steel beams or plates can be placed between the contact points of the load in the skidding system, but one of the more common methods is to use wooden blocking for load distribution. Whatever method you use, just ensure that the distributing material is placed firmly up against the front face plate of the push-pull head, or this plate will bend when hydraulic pressure is applied. Point loading can also occur from below the system. Care must be taken to ensure that the location where the tracks will be placed is clear of any debris and does not have any drain covers or other features that can potentially damage the tracks and slider plates from below. The recommended maximum loading of the XLP30 system is 3 tons per foot of length and 10 tons per foot of length for the XLP150 system. So now we've got the load on the system. You can put the load on the system in a number of ways. You can use a crane to lower the load on, or you can use jacks to jack your load up and slide the system under the load when it's elevated on the jacks, then lower the load onto the system. At this point now, we've got our tracks laid out. We've got our slider plate slide out connected to the push-pull head, and our push-pull cylinders connected to the push-pull head using the clevis pin and linch pin. And we're pushing, so we want to make sure that our directional control arms are in the down position in push mode, and the center of gravity arms is down on the rod end side. Now we're ready to actually connect our hydraulic hoses up to give the power force needed to push the load forward. You always want to make sure that you have a clean rag on hand and clean your hose connections prior to connecting to the cylinder, because this is the most common way of introducing debris and contamination into your hydraulic oil supply, and you want to keep that as clean as possible, because any sort of contamination and debris inside the hydraulic oil can damage the seals and hydraulic components in both your cylinder and your hydraulic power unit. So just simply clean the connections off. And then they're just a simple push it in, and it's a threaded connection, and you just want to go hand tight. There should be no need to use a wrench to put on or take off your hydraulic hoses. Connect to both your advance port and retract port of the cylinder. And once you've got your hoses connected up, we'll do the same thing at the hydraulic power unit. And you can use any 10,000 PSI double acting hydraulic power unit to operate this system. So now we're going to connect our hydraulic cylinders to hydraulic power unit. Here we have one of the Hydra-Slide electrical conventional power unit. This is the CPU 1-2E single phase electric model. It comes with two manifolds to connect your cylinders to. We call it an A manifold and a B manifold. The A manifold has V10E valves on it, which are flow control and holding valves. Depending on which mode of operation you're using the hydraulic power unit for, that being jacking mode or skidding mode, you want to make sure you hook up your hoses to the right manifold. In our situation right now, we are doing a hydraulic slide, so you want to make sure that you connect your retract ports of your cylinder to the A manifold with the V10E valves. The reason why is if you have a offset center of gravity of your load, or one side is heavier than the other, one of your push cylinders is going to push the lighter side a little quicker. So you can use these V10E valves as flow control, and you can throttle back the faster cylinder by simply closing and restricting flow of oil through the V10E valve. Then you would, in this case, connect your advance port of your cylinder to the B manifold. In this way, you would have full control of speed over your hydraulic cylinders. In this way, you can approximate synchronous skidding using a conventional power unit. And again, you just want to make sure that your hose couplers are just hand tight. There should never be any reason to put wrenches on your hoses, but you want to make sure that they are completely connected. Most of our troubleshooting is due to incomplete hose coupler connections. If by any chance you hook your hoses up backwards and you get them reversed, what's going to happen is when you go to advance your cylinder, it'll actually try to retract it, or you'll go to retract it and it'll try to advance it. So in that case, you simply depressurize your hoses and readjust your hoses to the proper orientation. To turn this power unit on, there's a simple on-off switch on the side of the motor. Turn it to the on position. To control the actuation of the cylinder, you use the directional control valve. This is a 4-way, 3-position manual control valve. It has a tandem center, and when you shift it to the B side, it will retract the cylinders because your retract side is connected to the B manifold, and when you shift it to the A side, it'll extend your cylinders because they're connected to the A manifold. Also, each manifold comes with its own pressure gauge, so you can monitor the pressure of both advance and retract. Why this is important is because if something starts to go wrong, one of the quickest ways the pump operator will know something's going wrong is with the pressure gauges. He'll know if something is off by what pressure he is operating the system at. Okay, at this point now, you've connected your hydraulic hoses to your cylinders, you've connected it to your power unit, you've double checked your setup, made sure that everything's flat, straight, and parallel to within plus or minus 1/4 inch. Your load is on the system. Now we're ready to actually do the slide. And simply turn on your power unit. And then I will shift my control valve to the A side, which will put oil out to the A manifold, extending your cylinders. Then once your cylinder's fully advanced, you shift to the B manifold, which will retract your cylinders. The cylinder rod ends or directional control arms will go up and over the ratchet and reset into the next ratchet. Now we're going to pull the load back. To do so, just switch the center of gravity arms to the back end of the cylinder, drop the directional control arms into pull mode.
Preventative maintenance for your hydraulic skidding system. When not in use, store all skidding system components in the supplied storage box in a dry location and protected from damage. Take special care of all hydraulic components and fittings. Keep skidding surfaces clean and dry. Wipe the skidding surfaces occasionally with an oily rag, but do not apply excess oil, grease, or any other lubricants. Repair or replace any broken, worn, or damaged components. Contact Hydra-Slide Limited for replacement parts. Keep cylinder rods fully retracted when not in use. Keep coupler threads clean, well lubricated, and secure the protective dust caps on all couplers when not in use. The cylinder assembly is assembled by the manufacturer using Loctite blue on the hex head bolts. If the cylinder assembly needs to be disassembled, apply heat to break the Loctite blue seal on the threads. It is recommended to then reapply Loctite on the hex head bolts during reassembly. Here are some troubleshooting tips for your hydraulic skidding system. Symptom: the push cylinders will not extend or extend only partially. The most probable causes for this is that a coupler is not fully engaged, or the load exceeds the capacity of the system, or a skid shoe or slider plate is jamming in the tracks. The recommended actions needed would be to check and tighten all hose couplers, or reduce the load on the system, or realign your track sections. Symptom: the push cylinder will not extend and oil is coming from the pressure relief valve or top of the cylinder. The most probable cause for this is that a hose coupler is not fully engaged. The recommended action needed would be to check and tighten all hose couplers, making sure that you check both your hose connections at your cylinder and at your hydraulic power unit. Symptom: the cylinders exhibit jerky, sporadic movement when extending. The most probable cause for this is that there's air trapped in the hydraulic system. So the recommended action needed would be to bleed the air from the hydraulic system. Symptom: the push cylinder will not retract. The most probable cause for this is that a coupler is not fully engaged. The recommended action needed would be to check and tighten all hose couplers. Symptom: the load does not move straight. The probable cause is that the track is not set up equidistant from the edge of the load, or the cylinders are not pushing in unison. The recommended action needed would be to reposition the tracks, or use a synchronous power unit or some other means to provide equal flow to the cylinders.
All right. So I just showed you how to set up and operate the XLP30 skidding system. This is our XLP150 skidding system. This system can push up to 250 tons and pull 150 tons. Its setup and operation is very similar to the XLP30 skidding system. However, there's a couple key differences that I'd like to show you. The XLP150 track sections connect together by sliding the two ends together, and the tab slot should run side by side. And to connect the tracks together, you just use the track connector bars, and they slide in to the lugs on the outside of the track sections. So no tools or fancy equipment needed, and now your tracks are connected and secured. So we've got some tracks connected. We've got the push-pull head down with one slider plate connected to it. And again, it's a dovetail connection, very similar to the XLP. This is our XLP150 push-pull cylinder support. The wedge plate on the top and bottom of the cylinder support is what dictates which mode of operation you're going to be in. When the wedge plate is pointing in this direction, it's in push mode. And when the wedge plate is pointing in this direction, it's in pull mode. So as you can see, disassembly of this system is just as easy as a setup, and every piece goes back into the storage box. And by viewing the storage box, you can see whether any components are missing. So everything has its own place within the storage box for safekeeping. I also put a nameplate on the inside of the storage box that shows the serial number, date of manufacturer, weight of the system, plus each item has its own part number and quantity that comes with a standard system. So for easy account of what came with the system, you can refer to this nameplate on the inside of the box. All right, so those are the key differences between the XLP150 skidding system and the XLP30 skidding system. This system here is great for pushing loads up to 250 tons or pulling loads up to 150 tons. This system is also available for rent at LGH, so visit rentlgh.com or contact your local rep. My name is Robert Young with Hydra-Slide, and I'd like to thank you for joining us with this training video.